to introduce ourselves briefly in a moment. I think it might be useful for you to know my background as well. I was the office administrator for the Manor Farm Community Centre in I was doing that for 3 years. I decided to leave to set up Simplex, but I am still part of the committee there and work closely with the treasurer there. So we're currently going through a community asset transfer. I don't know anybody in Peterborough or surrounding areas. Peterborough City Council is trying to get rid of their community centres and all the costs involved. So we're currently going through that. We haven't been open at all during lockdown because we've had a lot of work being done in preparation for the asset transfer. And to be frank, funds are, not great at the moment. So a lot of the things that you guys were saying, fully understand and sort of aware of, because we're going through much of the same kind of thing ourselves. So I do have a sort of background in community centres as well. Okay, so we'll move on.
Well, I was going to say, so just while we're talking about that, I'll just give you my background, yes, so just so you can see where we're both coming from. So I was the treasurer for Third Lean Scouting Group for, I think, 10 years. When my son started at Beavers, they needed a treasurer. I took over the job. Loved being involved in the Cubs, and so started training to become a Cub leader, which unfortunately meant I had to give up my treasury role because you can't have it for the conflict of interest, obviously. So I have had to give up the treasury side of it so that I could become a Cub leader, which I currently am. But so I have the background in doing all the treasury work and doing the charity commission, etc. So just so you know the background of both of us.
We've kind of got an idea what you're talking about anyway. It's kind of where we're going with that. Sorry, Cheryl, completely left you out there, didn't I? Okay, so we're screen sharing again. Can move on to the next one, please. Okay, so just a very quick introduction to us as a company. We are Simplex Solutions. Okay, I've worked for Cheryl before. She is in an account as let me start again. I've worked for Cheryl before. She was an accountant for a local business, and I came on board as her accounts assistant. We have known each other for many, many years because we are actually cousins as well. Okay, we really enjoyed working together, and during the lockdown last year, decided it might be a good time to put our skills together, mine in sort of customer service and admin, and Cheryl obviously as an accountant. And we set up what we would like to call a one-stop shop for businesses. We don't just offer accountancy services, we offer all-round packages for admin as well. So obviously we've talked about our background as the administrator at the community centre and the treasurer. We wanted to also offer our services to people that might find it harder to find accountants to do their work. Now, the reason I say that is because when our accountant at the community centre who examined our accounts retired, trying to find a new one that would do community centre accounts was next to impossible. They weren't really interested. Nobody really offered that kind of service. We did find one in the end, which was great. But I wanted this to be part of our business as well, that we can offer community centre accounts and payroll, etc. We wanted to, most of all, wanted to live and breathe our ethos of keeping things simple and flexible for our clients at an affordable price. We pride ourselves on our no nonsense, easy to understand advice and pricing. So that is us. That gives you a little insight into what we're doing now. So we will move on. And as Andy was saying earlier, the reason we've named this one the unsung hero of the committee is very much because that's what you are. Obviously, I work very closely with the treasurer at our centre, and I, especially now, in fact, during COVID, the amount of work that she has taken on is just huge, looking for grants, making sure we've always got money in the account. I know she's had some very sleepless nights over our finances in the last few months because of COVID. And she's really involved in everything to do with the centre, so it's a huge, huge job. And it was kind of our first tip, really, is because I think sometimes, and I have to say this to her, sometimes I think you forget that you're there to be supported by the committee as well, which is why we put these parts at the bottom here. Obviously, numbers 1 to 6 are the things that the treasurer tends to be involved in. but the statements at the bottom, I wanted to include these in as a reminder, as I have to do with her sometimes, that as much as a treasurer is heavily involved in the running of the centre, all of the trustees are collectively accountable for the conduct of the organisation. And that as a treasurer, you have a day-to-day responsibility for looking after your group's money. However, the committee as a whole is responsible for deciding how funds will be raised and spent. Your job is to keep accounts and report to the committee. So really, top tip number one, don't take it all on yourself. I know that's easier said than done, but from this point of view, I think that, you know, it's another tip would be is maybe to look into delegating if you have the chance, maybe set up a finance subcommittee, somebody who could deal with the fundraising side, maybe somebody who could look into grants, somebody to sort the insurance out every year, even if it's just passing off 1 or 2 jobs. In fact, really, that's how I got my role at the community centre, because the treasurer there, she was doing a huge amount and a lot of the bookings as well. And they decided as a committee that it would be advisable to get somebody in on a part-time basis. Obviously, that was a worry for them at the time, because, you know, they're a charity, they didn't want to spend money unnecessarily. But as it turns out, having me in the office, without singing my own praises, but we brought in more money having somebody in the office at regular times every day of the week. We brought in more money from bookings and inquiries than not having an office administrator. So again, something to think about. I know it's always scary to spend money on staff or etc., but sometimes it can actually be beneficial. Lots of our sort of people walking through the door, so they found it much better to have somebody in the office knowing when they were going to be there. And it also takes a lot of the pressure off the treasurer and the committee as a whole. Okay, I've waffled on, let's move on. I'll pass over to Cheryl now.
Right, so I'm just going to very quickly go through the legal reporting obligations, which I'm sure now that we know a bit of your background and most of you are treasurers and that, you probably already know some of this, but I'll just whiz over it so that you are aware of it. So obviously the legal reporting obligations for the Charity Commission is that any charity that has income below 250,000 can just do the simple accounts. Simple accounts basically are what they say. They are a record of income and expenses. So all your usual donations, fundraising, hall hire, against insurance, utilities, everything that you pay out, wages. You should also include an asset, what your assets are, but this is only your bank accounts. Your fixed assets, they don't really need to be, what you should have is you should have an inventory that you have of all of your items of stock. Whether this, when I say stock, I mean any equipment that you have, down to kettles, play equipment, anything that you have. And this should be checked every single year. The reason I'm saying this is to do with insurance. You know, if there was to be a fire, you need to be able to, you could provide exactly what you had. So that's more of an inventory rather than part of the accounts. If your accounts are over 250,000, then you will need an audit as well. Or if your governing document requires that. There's a lot more advice on the Charity Commission guidance, CC 17, so you're better off really reading more into that, or else I could spend a couple of hours going through it, but you probably know quite a lot of that anyway. The trustees' annual report, you must produce this, and basically within that, the things that need to declare is the charity's name, registration number, the address, and all the trustees' names. The structure of the organisation and how it's managed, who does what parts of each job, and what the activities and objectives are of the committee. And then obviously a financial review, including any details of reserves policy. Now we'll go a bit more into the reserves policy a bit later on to talk about that one. And the last thing on there is just saying that you should make your accounts available and the trustees report available to any public who request it. You can make a charge for this if you want to photocopy it or anything. We recommend just, if you have a website, popping it on your website. It just makes it nice and easy and open for anybody to see.
Okay. Just a quick pointer about the Trustees annual report that goes onto the Charity Commission website. I'm sure many of you know this already, but there are templates out there. And we also, for our community centre, we really use the minutes or the wording from our AGM from the Treasurer and use that as part of the report. So it weren't sort of having to retype the whole thing again. It covered everything that needed to be sort of said in that. Okay.
Just one thing that we're going to quickly mention is that there is a difference between parish councils and charities. So I've put the definitions up here. So if a parish council runs the community building, the accounts for the building are included within the parish accounts. Now, generally, you'd normally have a subcommittee who would do the building accounts. But if the parish council is the sole trustee of a charity, they must keep the charity's accounts separate from the parish council account. So that was just something that we've just wanted to make everybody aware of. So we're going to go on now to some good and bad practices that you should and shouldn't be doing. I'm going to start with the bad ones, because obviously as an accountant, they're the things that I would pick up. So we'll start with bad practice. So having pre-signed checks. It was mentioned earlier about the problems of, especially in COVID, actually having checks, being able to send them out. I know from personal experience that we have in the past had checks signed by one of the signatories and then just the other signatory sign it. That totally takes away the whole reason for having two signatories. At the end of the day, if fraud was to take place, then you wouldn't have a leg to stand on. Is all I can say on that one, really. And also, if you do write checks out, you are not allowed to write checks for expenses to yourself. Somebody else would have to do that within the committee. And so again, it's just keeping that all secure. So having large amounts of cash on site. I don't know where, obviously you'll all be different as to where you keep your cash, whether it's kept at the hall, whether it's kept at the Treasurer's house. But things that you really need to be thinking about is mainly for your insurance here. You know, what insurance values do you have? Is there specifics as to where it can be kept? Do you have to have a certain type of safe for it to be kept? Are you insured to take the money to the bank? You know, there's so many things here that need to be thought of. But the best piece of advice is, you know, don't keep large amounts. Have a set figure, that whatever that may be, and it will be relevant to your own community. But whether that's £500, whether it's £100, whatever it may be, have a set limit that as soon as you hit that, then you get that money into the bank, and it keeps it nice and secure. Having trustees that are authorised to sign checks, mandates that are related to each other, that's a big no-no. Obviously, it does happen that generally you can get quite a few family members that are on a committee because they have the same interests, but the two signatories or three signatories or whatever you have, they should not be related in any possible way. Paying for services, wages in cash. This is not advisable to do this. It is always better to do a cheque or a bank transfer if you can. Mainly for the wages. Really, it's to avoid any tax evasion. You know, although you may be paying them, you've got no proof of that at the end of the day if it's cash, so it's better not to do that. Using money received from revenue for petty cash purchases. Now, this is something that I've come across quite a lot. Somebody gets in some money from somebody who's hired the hall, for example, and then they have to go and pay a builder or whatever, 50 quid of it. They can't use that money. It's not the right accounting way of doing it. You should, if you was to receive, say, £100 in for the hire of the hall, you should bank that £100. then do a payment for the £50. A lot of people just think, well, I've got the money here, I might as well just pay it out. But that is really bad practice for accountancy. While we're talking about that, with the petty cash issue, firstly, what I would say, is it essential that you have a petty cash? If you do hold a petty cash, is that essential? Can you not just do everything through expense reports? So people put in their expenses and you pay them directly into the bank. It's all to do with audit trails and keeping things very transparent so that everybody can see exactly what's gone on. I mean, you're responsible for, as the Treasurer, you're responsible for telling the committee and showing the committee that everything is above board. So, I mean, you can still do that with a petty cash. The important thing is that you take the money out of the bank, you keep a good record of it, and then I would suggest using petty cash vouchers that you attach to the receipt and ensure that the person taking the money actually signs the petty cash receipt as well, so that you've got the proof. And before we go on to good practice, and I'm sure none of you do this because you did all sound like you knew what you were doing, but one little point that I will make is accounts cannot be made up from your bank statement. They should be made up as you go along. So not, you know, get your monthly bank statement and then look back through that and find out what's happened. You should be doing them daily or weekly or whatever works for you, but certainly don't use your bank statements as your record, because that is just not the right way to work.
You should always have invoices or receipts to back up every expense on that bank statement, and obviously your income as well, invoices for all your income. So that bank statement should go alongside all of the paperwork that goes with it.
Yeah, it's more of a check than a actual record.
Okay.
So they're the things you shouldn't be doing. We'll move on to what you should be doing.
Do the nice ones. Okay, so good practice. Now you'll probably skim through these and think, yeah, these are obvious. The reason I brought this first one at the top, so obviously I'm sure that you all have 2, maybe 3 signatories for checks, and also for bank authorisations. Now the reason I've brought the bank authorisation one is, again, I'm going to use a lot of my experience from the community centre and what we've done there. Obviously we have people signing the checks, and we also have people mandated on the bank. Now, as an office administrator, I used to pay out lots of bills, etc., through the bank. We did everything through the bank. We didn't have any petty cash at all. If, for instance, our caretaker came in with a receipt, he'd bought something for the centre, a new toilet seat, he would pass me the receipt and I would pay it through the bank into his bank account. Our general policy at the beginning was to have, if anything over £100, I would need to email the chairperson and the treasurer to confirm that we were allowed to pay that. Okay, so the wages every month, things like that. And then I would go onto the bank and I would make the payment. Simple as that. When we looked at getting the mandates changed on our bank account because some of our committee had left, we found that there is also a way of doing it, that when I wanted to make a payment on the bank, I would go in, once they'd set up the new mandate, I would go in onto the bank account, I would make the payment as usual, and that payment would sit in pending in our bank account. It wouldn't automatically go to the person that we were paying. I would then message my treasurer, who was the other mandated person on the bank, and say, we've got a payment in pending. Can you go on and authorise it, please? And she would then go on to the bank, authorise that payment, and then it would go through. It's a good 2-step check. Okay, yes, we can send emails. I could have sent emails to ask permission to pay anything, you know, a couple of pounds here or there. But this way it went through the bank and it was authorised properly through the bank by 2 people, which just adds a layer of protection for everybody involved. And we found it to be a really good way of doing it. Okay. Now this is, again, this is one that we picked out that we didn't really think about, because I know at our association, the bank statements are always sent to the treasurer. It makes sense. They're the ones who have to go through it. But it is shown as good practice to have that bank statement sent to somebody else first, ideally the chairperson, maybe the secretary, so that somebody else has their eyes on that bank statement before the treasurer. It's not so much a trust issue, but it is a, you know, it's a double check. Again, it's just good practice to do it that way. Okay, and that kind of surprised us, didn't even think about that. That's why we've put this in. Okay, so the keeping all paperwork relating to any transactions. So I'm guessing you all know anyway that you keep all your paperwork for a minimum of 6 years. Again, we put this one in because we come across this a lot with some of our clients. It's a type of paperwork that they're keeping. Okay, so I've put over on this side here, I don't think you can see my mouse moving, sorry, Cheryl's going to move. So we've got some things that aren't okay as paperwork. So often people will give us card receipts. Okay, these aren't okay. I mean, obviously you're not likely to be getting investigated by HMRC or anything like that, but good practice again. Card receipts aren't okay. Yes, they say the date and they say what, you know, where you've bought the items from, but it doesn't detail what you've bought. Okay, so you need a proper receipt. Okay, neither are packing slips, delivery notes, anything like that. That's not a proper form of paperwork to keep. Okay, again, they might not have the amounts on there. It's not detailed correctly. So really, for expenses, you want proper invoices that date, tell you exactly what you've bought and the total amount, and proper till receipts, again, showing everything you've bought. Again, we've thrown this in. I know it seems obvious, but we do find, you know, people are like, oh, well, it's a card receipt. Why can't that be accepted? Well, we don't know what you've bought on that card receipt. So just make sure that if somebody's doing expenses, things like that, that you're getting the correct receipts. Okay, and again, I've just thrown this one in there because I've made this mistake myself. When you get money in from, say, a private hirer, somebody's coming to pay for their regular bookings, count it in front of them. I know it sounds really obvious, but the amount of times that I have not, and it's been a few pounds short or £10 short, who knows who's right and who's wrong in that case. Ideally, you should be counted it in front of maybe another member of staff or another committee member, as well as the person paying, but I know that's not always possible. So always count it in front of the person who is paying you, and make sure you've got your receipts written out for that cash. Okay, and as Cheryl said, get it banked as soon as possible. Do not use it for petty cash. Okay, and it's me again. So the financial policy, again, we picked up on this one because although in your governing documents, you may have something on your finances, you might have some policies in there, but we've brought this one in because is it robust enough? Is it detailed enough? Okay, so a financial policy. So the Village Hall Management Committees as charity trustees are expected to be prudent in their actions to ensure that charity is financially sound. Operating without a business plan or making financial decisions on the hoof is neither prudent nor financially sound. Okay, it's good practice to have a financial policy. So what we're saying is maybe it's worth going back to your governing documents and making sure that a financial policy that is detailed enough is in place. We're going to move on to some of the things that could be included in that financial policy. Okay, so who has financial authority within your organisation? Yeah, a basic one, you know, who can sign the checks, who is mandated on the bank, but also might want to be included in there things like, what if some of your executive committee or whatever you may call them, you know, your secretary, chairperson, treasurer, what if they're on holiday? What if someone's not there and a payment needs to be made? Is there a policy in place to allow this to happen? Can somebody else go onto the bank? So all things to think about. It's easy to say, oh, yes, say for instance, the treasurer and the chairperson are the people that are mandated to sign checks and go onto the bank. If they're not there, what would happen then? So just worth thinking about as a backup plan. Okay, Cheryl will talk to you about reserves.
So yeah, I'm just going to talk briefly about the reserves. So not everybody will have them, but it's certainly something that you should be thinking about. I think this last year, if anything, has told us that prepare for the unexpected. And I can only go to my experience with the Cubs, and obviously we've had no income coming in at all with the Cubs. However, we've still got to pay all our capitation fees, and we still have certain expenses that we have to pay out. So part of the policy should be is what reserves you should have, and there's different types of reserves. So we have the restricted reserves, which basically would cover what I was just talking about. So what you'd normally look at is what is, for example, a year's worth of your costs. If you couldn't run at all, how much would it still cost you? For example, like at Yvette's community centre, they obviously had to furlough their staff. Now, whilst initially there was no cost involved in that, it then went to the 20%. So it's just making sure you've got an allowance, and that restricted reserve should really not be touched at all unless it's needed to. Then you could have a designated reserve. As a small charity at the Scouts, we used to have to save up, apply for grants, fundraise for any new equipment we needed, like if we needed a new van or anything. Because obviously we didn't have the money in the bank just to go out and get it. So we would have designated reserves. So for example, we used to do a thing called Show in a Day, which was a fundraising event that the children did. And any money made for that was put into a designated reserve for whatever it was we wanted to particularly buy that year, you know, whether it would be new camping equipment or, I mean, I'm putting it into my experience, but hopefully you can relate this into your sentence. And one thing, I mean, to suggest is if you can have a separate bank account, it's normally the best way of doing it, because then it's kept out of your normal day-to-day running of your bank account. If it's something that you're not going to be using for quite a long time, if it's money that, you know, it's going to take you a little while to fundraise for, see if you can get a high interest bank account. Not that there's many of them about at the moment, but, you know, if there's anything that you can do to put the money to be trying to be making money as well, then that's always a good thing. So that's really what just a recommendation with the reserves. I think it's something that don't really always think about to do, you know, that you would need reserves. But as I say, I think this last year has probably taught us quite a lot of new things. I'm also going to just go through quickly the Treasury reporting requirements, which again, you probably are all quite well aware of because you are treasurers, but basically it's the regular meeting reporting. So your report should have some significant detail in there so that people can actually understand them. That was one thing that I always found is, I mean, I always used to run mine on spreadsheets, but what you've got to remember is that when you're reporting to your committee, not all of them have any experience of accounts, how they're made up or anything like that. So try to make sure you do them in a format that everybody will understand. And obviously the things that should be including is your bank balances, most importantly. I found that was the main thing that anybody was interested in. How much money have we got to spend? Including any movements. So if you've moved between your reserves accounts, any payments you've made, any income that you've come in, and also very importantly, if you have any creditors or debtors. Not everybody will, most things are normally paid at the time, but some people do have accounts. That's quite important to know, because it's no point just telling them, oh, we've got £10,000 in the bank, but actually £7,000 of that is due to be paid out. So it's making sure that they're aware of all the information, financial information, that will help them make the decisions to be able to run the whole committee. And then current set of accounts, obviously you need to report that at each of your meetings. And if you do have a budget, which obviously we're talking about after the break, you can compare it to budgets as well. Obviously, you also have to prepare the accounts for the audit and present them at the AGM. So they're the main roles of the treasurer.
Okay, so we move on to the insurance policy. As we were talking about earlier, about delegating, maybe have somebody named in your financial policy that deals with the insurance. Okay, for some of you who don't own your halls, that's just going to be your contents insurance, maybe your public liability, employer's liability, those kind of things. For those that own your hall as well, obviously we're talking about buildings insurance. Again, I'm just going to relate a little thing here, and I don't know who this might find this useful, but our community centre is owned by Peterborough City Council, and when I joined the community centre, obviously I'm looking at all of the outgoings and seeing what we can do with them. Now, for years and years, Peterborough City Council automatically did our buildings insurance for us. We found our own contents, but they did our buildings insurance. Now, and we would pay them for that. We would pay them for that buildings insurance. And they were coming in about £1,200 a year for that buildings insurance. I asked Peterborough City Council, can we not source this ourselves? At which point they said, oh yeah, of course you can, no problem. Nobody knew this beforehand. So we did do that, and we went through an insurance company that specialises in community centres. And I think the first quote we got back, and it was like for like the quote, it was about £470 as opposed to the 1,200. So huge saving money. And another thing I'm just going to point out, we're on insurance policy. If you do own your building, and again, I'm sure you've all done this, but we had to have a survey during this CAT transfer. We had to have a survey done, a building survey on our community centre to get the rebuild value. Now, our rebuild value in the insurance that we had at the time for the building was, I think, £250,000. Okay, so that's what we were insuring our building for rebuild. Obviously, it was still Peterborough City Council's responsibility, but that's what it was insured for. We had the survey done, and actually the rebuild cost came in at 1.2 million. Okay, which would have had a huge, if we were paying the buildings insurance, you know, once we'd gone through the cap, that would have put a huge increase on our premium for starters. And God forbid if something had happened to the building, we were massively underinsured. So just another thing to keep an eye on when you're talking about who's going to sort out the insurance policies, just take all these things into account. Okay, arrangements for taking bonds or deposits from hirers and for the payment of dues. I think this just touches back onto Cheryl's point about bank accounts. And I know somebody asked about bank accounts and secure bank accounts when we were doing our introductions. Bank accounts are great for an audit trail. Everything is there. As Cheryl would always say to me, the bank account, the bank statement is king. If it says it on the bank statement, then it's correct. Okay, so having a bank account is a great way of keeping a track. So if you haven't got any petty cash or anything like that, everything goes in and out of your bank account. Obviously, you're going to be getting cash in, but as long as that's paid directly into the bank, you know, it keeps you a nice clear audit trail. As far as deposits go, again, in our experience, we have 3 accounts at our community centre. We have our main bank account where the private hirers pay in the hiring fees, the regular users pay in, etc. We pay our wages from there. So that's our main. We do have our deposit account as well, and that is solely for deposits. So we can keep a really close eye, make sure we're holding other people's money basically. So we want to keep a close eye that that is always correct. And we do have our reserves account, which was supposed to be a high interest account, but unfortunately not so much, very hard to come by. Okay, and I'll pass back over to Cheryl for the criteria.
Yeah, so just finally, before we go on to our comfort break, the criteria for, I mean, you know that you don't have to have independent examiners of your accounts if your income is less than 250,000. However, it is good practice to do it, and most committees would request that you have an independent examiner look at them. There's no set criteria. The main thing though is that they are not related to you, not you as a person, but you as an organisation in any way. They do need to be totally independent. So you can't sort of say, oh, my auntie's an accountant, she could do it. You shouldn't really. As I say, it's not law or anything like that, but it's advisable that it's done by somebody totally separate. And if they've got a financial background, then obviously that does help because they will understand it so much better. But again, that's not a definite. You don't have to do that.
Okay. Right, so
Yvette and Cheryl, can I just say, interesting listening to you on this. As I say, it's a while since I've done this treasurer, and very much trying to incorporate 2 things here. I think knowing that we did ours in a very simple form before because we were under that category that you said for the sort of £250,000 income. We were certainly never near that. So that's the side that, yeah, my sort of system is designed for. But I can see that there is a lot more that you're telling us here that will evolve with this system. As we grow, we're going to need to have more things, but starting off, it's going to be smaller. But I think the most important thing, which is nice to hear that back up from you, is that ultimately we're responsible to the public. And it's important that they understand things very, very clearly.
Yes.
Because we are in a situation where I think, having not long been on the council and trying to understand the accounts we get from there, I'm battling this sort of thing of saying, well, if I didn't know something about accounts, I would not be able to understand where you're coming from.
Yes.
And I'm starting to get them to come with me to say, oh yes, well, what do you think? I said, well, could you perhaps have a bit more narrative here that tells people that this is a figure, it means nothing, they can't see how it ties up to anything else. So you need to have that narrative in the explanation. So that's quite nice, because if I start off and I'm not exactly on target, I'm on the lines that you're suggesting. So I just need to expand it beyond that.
No, I think Cheryl's going to, I think you're completely right. Cheryl's going to, when we go into this next bit, we've kind of refined that slightly in our break, actually, just listening to some of the comments at the beginning. And we're going to go into, I don't know if there is anybody on here who is over the 250,000. If there are, if you could just say yes. No. Okay. So we are talking more about simple accounts here. And I think we're going to reiterate that they can be simple. You don't need to go too mad with them. And I think Cheryl's, we're going to show you a few more examples than we were going to in this next section. And I think, are we actually at 10 past now anyway? Yeah, we're here. So I think we'll get moving on that, because thank you for that, Julie. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So our lovely welcome back screen. That took some time to find that graphic. Okay, so we're going to move on to budgets and forecasts then, and we will touch on obviously spreadsheets for simple accounts, etc. as well. But the budgets and forecasts are slightly different to your general month-to-month accounts. Obviously, they are as they are. They're exactly what you've had coming in and going out. Now, budgets and forecasts, it's important for your business or for your centre, village hall, because it can mean the difference. Having one of these can mean the difference between a great year where you know what to expect and a year where you're firefighting all year long, unexpected things coming in, etc. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes again. Now, they're not going to be perfect, these budgets and forecasts, because you are not Mystic Meg. You cannot see everything come in, okay? But what you can do is put in place as many safeguards as you can. If you need to overestimate on some of your expenses, that's fine, because at the end of the year, you might be in a much better position than you thought, but it does give you a very good idea of where you are. And it's also a useful tool in your monthly meetings. When you present your treasurer's report, you can also compare it to what you forecast for the year and to see where you're at. Okay. It's useful for, I know one lady has said that she uses still the book and does it on paper, which is absolutely fine. It is useful to do it in a spreadsheet, purely because you can change some figures around. You can have a play with the figures, you can have a play with your higher rates, with some of your expenses, and get some more ideas from that as well. So they are really useful when you're looking to fundraise for something, when you're looking to get grants. To have that kind of information there is really useful. But as I said, it doesn't need to be perfect. You are not Mystic Meg and can't foresee everything. So I'm going to pass on to Cheryl, who's we've added a couple of extra little bits in here for this budgeting and spreadsheet side of things to hopefully cover sort of any questions you may have. So, sorry.
Okay. That's all right. So yeah, I just wanted to obviously listen to you all in the first half and everything. I just wanted to say, don't ever feel that you're not doing a good enough job. Whether you do your accounts in a manual analysis book, whether you do it in spreadsheet form, or whether you use one of the accounting softwares out there, Xero, QuickBooks, whatever, any of those will work. So do not ever feel that if you're still doing things manually in a book, you're not doing things to the right standard. just as long as you're recording the information, that is the most important thing. So I just wanted to stress that that is really important, because obviously in today's age of technology, everybody thinks that we should be having all the software that we can have. You don't actually have to have it if you're not comfortable with it. So I was going to go straight onto the budget spreadsheet, but what I'm going to do is I've just quickly brought up a couple of the spreadsheets that when I was treasurer I used. So it's just, if you don't have a spreadsheet and you wanted to incorporate one, it's just to give you an idea of how we used to do it. So if I'm just going to turn that way a little bit so that I can still see my screen over here, sort of multitasking in this office here. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen just so that I can show you a different screen, which will be, right, so you might not be able to see it in brilliant detail because obviously it's quite a big spreadsheet, but basically this is what I used to run. So we have different groups within the Cubs. We had Beavers, Cubs, Scouts and Explorers, and on a monthly basis they would give me all their sub money that they've received in from the members, and also any fundraising money, that sort of thing. So every time I received money, I would record it onto this spreadsheet. But again, as I say, you can do this in a book or anything. So just the date that I got it, the description, I used to always number all of my receipts. So if I ever paid money out, I always numbered it, because then if anybody says, oh, you know, well, what was that for? You can look at your spreadsheet. Oh, that's receipt number 4. You go to your file, it's receipt number 4. It's just a really simple thing, but it makes life a lot easier when you're being asked questions at your meetings. So then I would have, if it was cash, I put it in the cash column so I could always see how much cash I had and when I needed to bank it. And then obviously the bank account, and I could see what balance is. That meant if our group exec rang me at any point in time to say, oh, we urgently need to do this, have we got the money, I'm going to run it by the committee, I could tell her what we had available. And then when I got the bank statements, I would check to see if it had cleared the bank, so I knew exactly what still needed to come out of the bank. And then on this side of it, I would just break it down so that it was easy for me to prepare my annual accounts. So where the money had come from, basically, I mean, you'd have your own different headings, depending on what's relevant to you. But I'd have income on this side and expenditure on that side. From that, I then could easily just produce, I used to produce this for the committee, basically. So going back to, you know, the detail of what people want, not everybody is financially minded. So all they wanted to be able to see is, I did a comparison to the previous year, because I think that's always relevant. You can see, you know, if your business is increasing or if there's any areas you need to look at. And it was just basically what money we had come in, where it came from. And then what money we had going out. Simple as that, really. Statement of assets and liabilities was really, as was mainly all just the cash funds, and making sure it all balanced. And then I would just do a brief breakdown just so that people could see where the money had come from. So as I said, we did show in a day, we could see what sort of money it came from. So as regards to reporting as a treasurer, really, people don't want massive amounts of information. They really do want a snapshot of where your organisation's at. So just pop them in, really, just for the people that haven't got spreadsheets and things, so that they can see. They don't have to be daunting. They can be quite easy, hopefully. I'm saying, oh, I'll stop sharing now. Okay, so I'm now going to share with you. So we're going to talk about budgets, basically, like Yvette was just saying, about having a budget. Now, I'm going to show you this, but then what we've actually done is I've taken some screenshots, because we found that when we shared this, you couldn't see it very well. So I've taken some screenshots for when we actually talk about it in a bit more detail. But it is really helpful to have a budget, because like Yvette said, you know, you can do a lot of comparisons and you can see what you need to do to be able to make the centre worthwhile running, basically. This budget spreadsheet obviously has formulas, etc. in it. If anybody wants it at the end, then we're happy to send it to you free of charge. You just need to send us your email, but we'll go over that later. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this screen. I'm just going to show you the screenshots, because it is a lot easier to see it on the screenshots as to what you would do. Let's go back to the bottom. Oh, there we go. It's all a bit technical, this is. My husband works in IT, so I don't normally have to do technical stuff like this. So it's all been a bit new to us, but I normally just shout at him when I have to do things like this. So let's go on to this. Right, so basically when you're looking at your budget, what you want to be looking at is the different types of income that you've got coming in. You will have your regular income. So you'll have if you do classes, somebody mentioned that you have a play group come in. So if you've got mums and tots, the people that use it every single week. So basically what this spreadsheet is you're putting in your income from your groups that use it on a regular basis. What day, and we've filled in just the top one, but what times they come in. And then you could look each day and you can see what you've still got available. How many hours they use it for, and the rate that you charge, because obviously you might charge different prices to different groups. So that will then work out your total for each week. Now, not all groups will use it all year. And this is why a budget's really good, because you might just think, oh, well, I've got that group, but some of them might only meet on a monthly basis, some of them fortnightly, some of them might not, it's school holidays, you know, they might. So you then get your yearly figure, which is giving you your income here, your total income here. Then there's the other side of things, the private hire. So the people who want their 50th birthday party or a craft fair or things like that. What I would always say is use, if you can, always when you're writing your budget, use your historical figures and your current information that you know. So go back to last year's, have a little look. How much did you, I mean, obviously not last year's, because you did nothing, not the best year to use, but a normal trading year. Look back and see, you know, how much did we hire out on a Friday and Saturday night, etc., etc. But also take into account any current information. So if you've upgraded your hall, like a lot of you were saying, you might find you get more people coming in because it's a nicer hall, or, you know, you've got to use that as well. So on the actual spreadsheet, when you put any data into these, then it will change all the figures for you. It's also got a bit for fundraising, so you can put in there, and also obviously grants, which we've not covered a lot, but it's a good thing to have in your budget if you think you're able to get any. So that is telling, and then at the bottom here we've got the overall totals. So that is telling us that on a weekly basis we use the hall for 53 hours. And that's how much money we get for it. So our average hourly rate is £16.25. Yeah, it's going to work that out for you. What you do need to allow for when you're looking at this is you must remember to allow for any downtime that you might have. So if you've got maybe messy play, for example, you know, if they do tip, you need to put a lot of equipment away, there will be downtime in between classes where you might have to do some cleaning, or there'll be some repairs and maintenance that might need to be done to the hall or the centre. So that's that one. We then go on to, so what we've looked at here for you is how much, because this is a really important thing, and if you can tell your committee this, then they can look at ways that they can improve and get more money coming in. So basically what this is saying is that, if you look back at the income sheet, you'll see that the regular centre usage is 33 hours a week. If you then include the non-regulars, that's 53. What we've then done is put how many hours could you possibly be open for? So do you have, if you have opening times, which we've put in there, they're your opening times. So if we use the centre to maximum capacity, it would be 93 hours a week. But we're actually, the regular usage is only using it for 33. So worked out as a percentage, that's only 35% of time. Okay, that shows you that there's a massive amount there that actually could, you know, that you, what you would then look at is, okay, if we spent a bit of money on advertising, would that bring in more groups? You know, would that bring in more private hire? So you can start playing around with the figures. You can sort of say, well, you know, it will cost us £200 to advertise in the local magazine. We'll put that in our expenses, but we think that that might increase the private hire by 4 hours a week. Does that help? Yeah. So that's what we're trying to show you there. You then go on to your expenditure. Now, Yvette's going to talk at the end a little bit about expenditure and reducing expenditure. And obviously, we've only just put some standard examples in here. You'll have different expenditure if your building's owned compared to if it's rented, because obviously if it's rented, things would be included within it. Sorry, one thing I didn't mention is just going back to your income as well. Another little tip for you is increasing your prices every year. So one of the things that is advised that you do, instead of like every 5 years putting it up by £3 or £4, and it seems like a big jump, to every year put it up by 25p an hour or 50p an hour. We did the same thing with the Cubs. We used to, every year there'd be like a 10% increase, rather than at the end of, you know, after 5 years, you're suddenly going, oh, well, it's gone up by £3 or £4. It's a mentality thing, but it seems to work. So again, you can use this budgeting spreadsheet to say, and as I say, when you get the spreadsheet, you'll see how you can manipulate it. You can just go, oh, okay, if we put it up by 15p an hour, you just literally change all your hourly rates, and it will tell you how much difference it makes to your income. So that's the idea of that. But yeah, basically with your expenses, all you're doing really is putting in all the costs that you know. Again, use your historical. Now this part of it as well, this shows you, so the total of your expenses is this is an example, obviously. So the total of the expenses was 37,000, okay. We've already worked out on the income that the average hourly rate was £16.25. So this formula here tells you how many hours you actually need to be hiring out the whole community centre, whatever, a year, just to cover your costs. This is not making any kind of, I know it's not classed as profit, but not making any money to invest. It's literally to cover your costs. So on a weekly basis, in this example, it's 44. So the reason why we're sort of bringing in the budget inside of things is because armed with this sort of information, it really does help you to be able to run your organisation better, because rather than just going, oh, yeah, well, we're sort of okay with the bank's got a bit of money in, so we're okay. This gives you the information you need to be able to say, right, what do we need to do? What are our targets? What are our objectives? Yeah, so that's where we are at with that. So then just as the final sheet, because I always like to see things just as a summary. I always think you can put in all the detail behind it, but it's always nice generally just to see where we're at. So then it's just got a summary sheet at the beginning that tells you what your income is, what your expenses are, and obviously what surplus or not that you've got. So that is the spreadsheet. As I say, we've got a little note of our email address. If anybody wants a copy of that spreadsheet, they are as a obviously it's a template. you are more than welcome to have it. It is free of charge. We're happy to give that to you. It's a very basic spreadsheet. We've not gone into any fancy formulas because obviously there's different levels of people using Excel. So if you want a copy of that, our email address will show you in a minute. So I'm going to pass back to Yvette because she's just going to talk to you a little bit about reducing some expenses if you can.
I know that was a huge amount of information coming in there as well. No, it's if you're not using spreadsheets or whatever, but I think it's difficult to show on the slides because I think when you're on the actual spreadsheet itself and you can mess about with the numbers, you can see how it all works a lot better. But I think Cheryl's covered it all there, really, how it can work for you. I was just the last bit, and then we are going to be going to question and answers. So with the expenses, again, I'm sure many of you do this, but it's always worth keeping an eye on your renewals and things like that. When I moved into the centre as office admin, one of my tasks was to look through all of our expenses. It's always worth doing, maybe once every 6 months, once every year. The obvious ones, the utilities, obviously keeping an eye on those renewal dates, making sure you're getting the best deals. The buildings insurance, as I pointed out earlier, contents insurance. Our cleaning materials, even we were just getting them from Espo because it was handy, etc. But we found a local cleaning company that delivered them free of charge whenever we wanted it, next day, and they were a lot cheaper. Obviously, we've added some expenses on here that if you don't own the building, you probably don't pay for. But obviously, when we're going through our cap transfer at the moment, and they are things that our centre is going to have to pay for. So always keep a check on those quotes. Make sure you're getting the best deal. I know cheaper is not always best, so obviously think about that as well. But you are obviously looking for the best value for money within your organisation. Okay, I think we've talked enough to you, and I think we should go. We go to the end bit. So we just want to, before we go into question and answer, thank you all very much for attending today. We were extremely nervous, I'm not going to lie. Thank you for Lisa from ACRE for giving us the opportunity to present this training. If you did want a copy of that budget template, and if there's any questions on email that you want to ask us about that, please feel free. Our email address is there, simplex-solutions@outlook.com. And obviously we're just going to throw in that we are available for independent examinations, payroll and help with budgeting and forecasting because we're very cheeky. So we will go straight to question and answer time. Thank you all so much for listening to us prattle on for the last hour and a half or so. How can we help? Is there anything?
I'm going to stop sharing the screen just so that I can see everybody because I can only see a few of you, otherwise that's better.
We're done.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Yvette and Cheryl. That was really informative, and I've learned stuff this morning. So that was absolutely brilliant of you both. And no need to be nervous because it was, it was lovely. Thank you very much for your assistance today. I'll leave you to answer your questions now.
Thank you very much. I know we've touched on a lot of different smaller bits in this training. Obviously time was an issue, so we wanted to try and touch on a few things, so we haven't gone incredibly in depth maybe into some areas that you're interested in, so apologise for that, but we've tried to include as much as we can. Is there anything anybody would like to ask us at all?
Sue's got her hand up.
Oh, Sue, is that a hand up?
It is indeed, yes.
Oh,
Hi.
all new to me. Hi, Sue. Hi.
Hi, thanks for today. It's been really, really good and interesting. I must admit, covered things that I probably wouldn't have even thought of, so that it's great. I was going to the increase of the hiring rate. Now, the trust didn't increase the last time they should have done. They were increasing annually. They gave the hirers a reprieve, and they were increasing at 3% each year. I just wondered whether in the current climate it's best not to increase the hiring rate now, whether you agree with that or what your thoughts are on that.
I would say that I wouldn't this year.
No.
As much as it's general advice that we give, I just think it's been an awful year for everybody, isn't it? And I just think times are hard, and really you just want to get people back into your centre, putting your price up. I think this year would probably not be advisable. But
it'd be a bit of a slap round the face, wouldn't it?
probably, yeah.
We always used to say in our centre, we would always say that our regular users were our bread and butter, and our private hirers were the jam on the top.
Yeah.
And you don't want to annoy your bread and butter, because they are the ones that fund the majority. So yeah, maybe next year.
Or you could look at your private hire one, to be fair, because that's going to be in huge demand this year. You know, you've got all the weddings to catch up on, all the birthday parties to catch up. I know I had quite a significant birthday a few weeks ago that we don't talk about.
Could look at that side of it, yeah.
I'm quite looking forward to, you know, getting everybody together. So the private hire side of it, you could maybe look at that, because, you know, supply and demand.
We did increase the rate for hirers when we kept the regular users rate the same. We actually put that one up, so we can probably do that again this year to make up for everything. But no, that's great. Thanks for your help there.
No problem, Andy.
Oh, sorry, hold on. We got a hand up from Andy. Sorry, we'll come back to you, Julie, in just a second.
Fine, that's okay.
Andy.
Okay, I'll talk now. Yeah, thanks very much, Cheryl and Yvette. That was superb from my point of view. Although I've been doing the job for a while, you do learn a lot through these sessions, and we've certainly got a few gaps to fill. A couple of things. You mentioned templates for, I think, narrative annual reports. Would you have any of those available that you could let us have at all?
They are available on the oh, sorry,
let me,
I was just going to say, I could chip in there. There are ACRE templates, but there are also templates on the Charity Commission website as well.
Oh, right, okay.
So I can pick that up with you afterwards, Andy, if you wanted.
Yeah, well, I could have a search. Yeah.
We picked ours up, the Charity Commission Trustees report. We picked that up from the Charity Commission website and filled that out on there. And I literally copied and pasted in the minutes from our AGM, the Treasurer's report, for our year's thing. And then I do believe, you say ACRE have got that other template for, what was it, the financial policy.
Yes.
So
so we provide a template for an annual report, so that you can structure that annual report for your AGM meeting, and then that just goes with your financial report to the Charity Commission. So what works for your charity, really? Yeah.
Okay. And I guess the second is more of a point rather than a question. I'm certainly going to be looking at our sort of financial policy, because we haven't got one as such, but what we have got is an expenses policy. Okay. And I think we used some sort of template from or some guidance from ACRE for that one. So I guess we could combine the two into one policy, couldn't we?
Yes,
so a financial policy to cover expenses as well.
So 100%, yeah.
Yeah, so it covers things like if we were going out to tender to get some building work done, the limits when we need more than one quote, etc., as well as the requirements for trustees claiming expenses, if you like.
It's just a safeguarding policy more than anything, really. It's just, you know, you're putting in your policies to say that if we're going to do this, this is the way that we're going to do it. Everybody knows where they stand then, and it's just
Oh, I think I don't know if John's already gone there, but thank you very much, John. Just seeing that you're leaving, but thank you for joining today.
Okay, Julie.
Right. As I said earlier, we're new to this. We're literally at the start of setting up this management committee, which will be a charitable trust to run our village hall. So is there any chance that the slideshow you've done, could you email that to us at all?
Yes, and I do believe
that's got lots of points that you know, I've been trying to make notes as we've gone through, but having that to look at would be really useful to say, have I thought about that? Have we done that? You know.
So Julie, the point of recording the session is what we'll do after this is I'll edit out the break part and the bit at the beginning. That will then be uploaded onto our website, and I'll email it round to everybody, so you've got it to refer back to, because sometimes you miss stuff when you're kind of attending these sessions.
Yeah,
so absolutely. You can take back at your own time, and with Yvette and Cheryl's permission, I'll also include the PDF version of their presentation if they're happy for me to do that.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Of course. Yeah.
So do we have to come to you, Lisa? Do we have to send you details, or just?
No, if I'll have your email address that you booked on with, and so I'll automatically send it round to everybody who attended today.
All right, I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm not sure if you've got mine because
I had Val's and Barbara's from your parish council.
yeah, Val couldn't make it, so I stepped in because of Val.
Yeah, that's fine. So I can send it back to Val, or we can have a conversation afterwards. Whatever
Right. Okay, fine. That's lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
And just a couple of things then that you mentioned. You were saying about that your village hall in the Peterborough area, you were having that as an asset. Well, what's happening with ours is that it was the old school. It wasn't used. Well, it was used, but for very little. But obviously under South Cambs County Council control, district council control. So, and they made the offer to us to lease it for a peppercorn rent for 99 years, and we have never had a village hall nor anywhere to build one.
Okay.
In our village, so it was a no-brainer to say yes, please, let's do this.
Yeah, that's great.
But obviously, I'm pretty sure that in the agreement we will have to maintain the building during that 99-year lease. It's going to be at a spec we've all agreed as we take it over, but then we will have to maintain it through that period. So it would be necessary then for us to have coverage on the buildings insurance that you were talking about, like rebuild and all that sort of thing.
I don't know, because let me just check with Lisa on this one, because it would depend. So would you just be leasing it from Cambs County Council, or would you own it?
No, we'd lease it still.
So the devil there is in the detail. You need to check your lease and see what you're signing up to.
Right.
So absolutely we always recommend that when you're entering into a lease negotiation that you have your own legal advice.
Yeah.
You seek your own legal advice before signing that document, and make sure that it's suitable for the transaction that you want to enter into. If the responsibility sits with you to insure the building, absolutely try and go to a specialist provider. There are lots of companies out there who provide specialised insurance packages for village halls and community buildings. We can put you in touch with a few of them. And I always recommend that you treat it very much like you would your own house. It's a competitive market out there. Go and get a few quotes. And find the best deal for you that meets your needs.
Absolutely. Yeah, just keep an eye on all of those costings and make sure you know exactly what you're going to be paying for after that lease has been transferred over to you, because that's something that we got caught out on with a few bits and pieces, which is why we put together a budget to make sure that we could see ahead with these extra costs that we would have, getting your fire extinguishers checked, getting your regular weekly fire alarm checks. They're all expenses you need to look into and get costed up and get quotes for. So it takes a bit of time. So you need to know exactly what you're responsible for when that lease goes through. Really important.
Okay.
Just going back to the insurance aspect, the other bit I should have mentioned in there is the Charity Commission does recommend that you should get your building revalued every 5 years. And the purpose for that is exactly like Yvette said. It's about trustees falling into the position where they fall behind and then they find themselves in an underinsured position. And God forbid, if anything was to go wrong, if you're an unincorporated charity, that responsibility would fall personally onto those charity trustees.
Yeah, we are going to be an incorporated, but we have already made that decision because of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's about being aware. If you're an unincorporated charity, generally the risk isn't huge or isn't any greater than it was for previous years. But it's about being aware and making sure you're putting those steps in place to avoid that position.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
One last question. I know I seem to be having a hog in you here. Just talking about, because we're starting off and having to have people fill positions and do things. We have currently in our advisory group for it, a current accountant who is, I believe, soon retiring from his business. So would he be able to do our check if he was on the committee, or would he just need to be a supporter and not be involved in the management committee structure to be able to give us that check?
Let me just say that, I mean, with my community centre, I'm a committee member on. The treasurer said, I'd love for you and Cheryl to be able to do our examination, make it so much easier. We can't do that. I've got too much of an interest in the committee. We've sent it to someone who has nothing to do with the centre at all. I think it's for transparency and etc.
So again, coming back to that point of somebody not involved, as I said to you at the beginning, my daughter is an accountant but lives near Leicestershire. So that wouldn't be.
No,
if
I wouldn't.
Personally related to the individual, so that wouldn't be allowed.
It wouldn't be allowed because we're on it. So we have to find. It's my finance head coming on. I'm trying to find somebody who will either do it for nothing, or do it at a reduced fee because they're interested in helping, sort of thing.
Paying to have the work done is not wrong. It's in the best interest of your charity, and as charity trustees, you must always act in the best interest of your charity.
Fine. No, I'm glad that's just cleared it up for me.
Paying to have somebody to do the work is in principle for your charity the right thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. I see Sue. Have you got your hand up again?
I have indeed.
Hiya.
Hello again. Just going back to my question right at the beginning of the coffee morning, what system is best for us to use for a small business when we are not VAT registered and we have an accountant that does our payroll on a gratis basis? Is it better to use a program or is it better to use a spreadsheet? And if it's a spreadsheet, have you got a recommendation or a template?
Can I, before you say that, sorry, is it Kathy? Kathy? Yeah, I will come to you straight afterwards. I'm so sorry if I did miss you then. I will come to you after this one. I'm sorry. Cheryl, do you want to?
Yeah, so personally, if I was you, Sue, I would do it on spreadsheet because to me, if you don't actually have to have an accounting package, if there's no VAT involved or unless you specifically want to use an accounting package, a spreadsheet is acceptable. Obviously, there's a cost involved in accounting packages.
Yeah, I prefer a spreadsheet. I actually like doing that work, so I just want something simpler.
Yeah, and well, I hope you managed to see the one, and then you'll be able to look back at the one that I used to do for my cubs. It really doesn't have to be anything fancy. It really can just be an in and an out column and a breaking it down into what you want to detail within your reports, really, you know, where your incomes come from, what the expenses are. It doesn't have to be fancy. I mean, if you want to use an accounting package, either of them are acceptable. There's lots of accounting packages out there, to be fair. We personally, as Simplex, have got our own accounting package that we all use called VT Transaction, and that's mainly just because we can have a lot of clients under it. But we also run QuickBooks for some of our clients and Xero. So the benefits of, I'm going to go just tell you what the benefits of having an accounting package are, is like somebody said earlier, you because it's cloud-based, anybody can see it. The only thing with a spreadsheet is that it's generally just on your computer. Now, obviously, you can email it at any point in time to whoever wants to see it. However, you know, if somebody else wants to jump on, or if you are splitting down the work into subcommittees, then maybe it depends on the size of your accounts, to be honest with you. If you've not got too much going through and you're happy to just have one person dealing with it, I'd say spreadsheet because there's no cost involved, and keep it simple. If you're going to have more people involved, then probably go for the accounting package because different people can jump on and do the bit that they're going to be dealing with.
Right. Our previous trustee that created the spreadsheet that I'm currently using has got sums in there, what do you call it? To compare to the previous year on everything. So
That's a good thing to do. It's the same with your budgeting as well. I mean, you're basically looking back and you're almost looking forward as well, which is always worth doing, having that on there so you can compare to the previous year and then use your budget to have a look at how you're going with your forecast as well. So, yeah.
Right, lovely. Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you.
And we're just going to go to Kathy and then we'll come to you, Angela.
And then Penny. Yeah, so we're writing them down.
We're writing them down so we're not forgetting.
So Kathy, sorry.
I just wanted to touch on, pick up on something Lisa commented on. And Lisa, when you were talking about insurance, you were saying if I think if you're underinsured, if you're an unincorporated charity, that the trustees personally would be liable, which has just sort of set me, wow. Does that mean if you're in an incorporated one, you are not personally liable?
So if you're unincorporated, the liability would sit with the individuals.
Right.
If you're incorporated, then you are seen in law as an entity. So you're seen as a company in law, and so you have that protection. So you're not seen as individuals, but when you're an unincorporated charity, you are simply individuals.
Okay. And how would I be able to check which we are, whether we're incorporated?
It would be in your governing document. Which village hall are you again?
Grantchester.
Grantchester, okay. I can have a look at your governing. I don't know if I've got your governing document on file, but I could have a look for you. If you want to drop me a line, we can have a conversation about that afterwards.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, so we'll move on to Angela.
Okay. No, I was just interested about the costings of the village hall for insurance purposes. Was there somebody in particular that you got in to actually do that valuation? Is there somebody that specialises in village halls? We've got fairly modern 10-year-old, but we've got a lot of equipment in there. We've got a lot of lighting, specialist lighting, and some of the Wi-Fi and some of the security stuff. And it'd be quite interesting to know whether that's been updated from the 10 years when it's been built, and whether we're paying the right amount of insurance.
Absolutely. So you're looking at really your building and your contents there, because obviously you've got the bits. So as Cheryl said earlier, with your contents, keeping that fixed asset list. So your tables, your chairs, your CCTV, all of these things, keeping that up to date. So you've got, you know, if you buy anything new, add it to that list. Okay, so because that's your list there ready for the insurance company. Yeah, once a year, double check everything, go through it all. You know, if something's broken, take it off. You've got rid of something, take it off. Okay, so there's your sort of fixed assets, you know, within your contents insurance. And then for your buildings insurance. Now, when it happened at our centre, through our community asset transfer, it turned out it's a bit complicated, but the parish council were going to be our landlords. They were going to be passed the community centre from Peterborough City Council and be our landlords. So I do believe that the parish council got in contact with their insurers who insure a lot of the parish property, and they got a surveyor to come out to survey the building for the building rebuild cost, and they'll go around the entire building inside and out and have a look at that for you. So I don't know who your insurers are, but it might be worth saying to them, if you do pay for your buildings insurance, that you might want to, as Lisa said, should be done every 5 years. Am I right in all of that, Lisa?
I'll just chip in there as well, because some insurance companies, there are a couple of them, Allied Westminster and Norris and Fisher both do it, where they do a free desktop exercise as part of the valuation process. Now, I've had good and bad feedback on that, so I'll be absolutely honest with you, in the sense that some people have really valued that service, but other people have actually said that they felt that it was overvaluation from the desktop exercise, because they don't physically come out to your building, they do it you know, virtually. They do a desktop view of it. So they preferred actually getting a local surveyor to come in to do the work, and they simply employed the local surveyor, and it was around about £200 they told me to do it. So the choice is yours. Check out with the insurance company to see if they do offer that free service. Alternatively, you can employ a local surveyor to do the works.
Okay. Thanks. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. And I think with Penny, was it Penny next?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
This is just a very quick one. You mentioned keeping costs down, ESPO. We use ESPO. Who was your cleaning one where you get your cleaning products from?
Okay, we get ours from CCL Cleaning. If you search them on the internet, they are a locally based Peterborough company, and they, depending on where you are, they deliver the next day. And they came out, to be fair, they come out and give you your individual prices for your centre. They'll determine what sort of things you'll need. They'll come out and have a chat with you, and they'll send you a price list that's specific for your centre. Okay, so you probably won't see any prices online, but we costed that up against the ESPO prices, and they came out a lot cheaper, and it came quicker, and it was free delivery. So for us, it was to be fair, ESPO we still have used for some stationery bits because they don't do that. But all their cleaning stuff, and they'll send you, if you want to sort of get an eye, especially when COVID happened, and we needed all of the new, the sanitizing and everything, they sent us out lots of quotes and costings for those to show us the different ranges they had. So they're really, really good.
Lovely.
Sorry, I'm not selling for them or anything, but we found them good.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have I missed any? Has anybody else got anything that they wanted to add, or is that all okay?
You've probably covered everybody.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Can I once again thank you, Cheryl and Yvette, for your time today, because it's been really useful, and it's been great to have you to do that presentation. And also, I think the unique thing that we've got is that you've got that charity knowledge, and you've actually been there, done it, and you're active trustees and treasurers in your own capacity. So you could bring that knowledge with you to share with others, and that's invaluable. So thank you very much for your time.
We've enjoyed meeting you.
Yeah, it's been really good actually. We were quite nervous, but it's been great, and you're all lovely. So thank you very much for listening to us all morning. I appreciate that.
Can I just ask a quick question about cleaning costs? The Holborn Centre are using Initial Rent-A-Kill, and they've continued to charge us monthly even when we shut down. And when I've asked for a stop in costs on some things, they've refused it.
What are you paying Initial for?
So they usually come in and empty the nappy bins, the sanitary bins, air fresheners. We've
had the same problem with Biffa. Biffa have continued to charge us, even though we've managed to get the rates down. So I think what we've had to do on that one is look at the contract for that one, because it's now been a year. It's time to look at the contract, check when you can get out and see what your get out clause is, or at least ask them to, if they've not been in at all, not been able to come in, ask them to look at reducing your monthly fee, is what I would suggest on that one. But we've had the same issue with Biffa. So
not very friendly, is it?
No, it's not
Thank you.
is it? No problem.
No, thank you.
All right. Well, I hope you'll enjoy the sunshine of today. We're all going to get out in the garden now, aren't we?
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Very much. What I will do is I will send around the recording later on this afternoon, along with the PDF version of the presentation. I'll also copy in Yvette and Cheryl so that you can contact them directly if you've got any follow-up questions, or indeed if you wanted their template document that they showed us today.
Right.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.